right, we took the week off because I don't think we have taken a week off probably since the beginning of the football season, correct?
Maybe once, but
I don't think so.
if that.
So it was a long overdue break needed, even if it was just literally 1 week. We were taking off for anticipation of the Aaron Rodgers signing. It turns out he's just never going to sign, so it's whatever. We're just going to move on from that. It doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things anyway. We have a larger episode, I think. I don't know how, it depends how quick we go through some of this stuff, but let's get into it. The first thing that I wanted to start with, and you can obviously get your notes, whatever you have out ready for this, but the Bengals' questionable approach to team building that has now been very public, and everybody kind of has the same opinion of it, is like they're cooked. The longest awaited contracts that needed to be done was the Jamar Chase, which he got 4 years, 161 million, and T Higgins, who got 4 years, 115 million, which now means the Bengals will be spending 44% of their cap on three players, $125 million per year: Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T Higgins.
That's insane. I mean, great. You get to keep those three guys around for the next handful of years, but not the best way to build out a roster, especially when your defense was one of the worst in the NFL last season. They gave up 30 passing touchdowns on defense, which was fourth worst, and 20 rushing touchdowns on defense, which was seventh worst. So, like, they just basically put themselves in handcuffs as far as realistically improving that side of the football. They have not been drafting well, and they were really banking on some of these recent draft picks on the defensive side of the ball to hit, and they haven't.
Yeah, they haven't. Great way to put it. This does solve one of their problems, though. Joe Burrow is happy, quote unquote. But it feels like, and this might rub Bengals fans the wrong way, but it feels like the Joey B tenure has been a bit overrated, in my opinion. But it's not his fault, because he obviously is an exceptional quarterback. He goes out every year and balls. 2020 rookie season, 4-11, Joe Burrow knee injury. He played 10 games. 2021 bounce back season, 10-7. They went on a tear through the playoffs that season, from the wild card, and lost in the Super Bowl to the Rams. 2022, 12-4, first in the division, lost in the conference championship to the Chiefs. 2023, 9-8, Joey B wrist injury. He played 10 games, missed the playoffs. 2024, 9-8, Joe Burrow, great season, and ultimately missed the playoffs. We've talked about this a few times, is the Bengals start out every single season 0-2, 1-3, and always put themselves behind the 8 ball at the very beginning of the season. And it just feels like this move and how they're constructed as of right now, who their head coach is, I don't see that problem getting solved. I know that they heat up towards the end of the season. They went on a tear at the end of the year and won the games that they needed to win. But ultimately, if they didn't start out so poorly, they would have been a shoo-in for the playoffs this year.
Yeah, but it also doesn't help. And when your starting quarterback is injured for X amount of games,
yeah, he's
pretty
missed
much
20. Yeah, he's
every
missed
other
a
season.
lot of games in his career already in his 5-year career as of right now.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any doubt that either one of us think that he's a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. But
100%.
when he plays, but you got to be out there, and when he's not out there, this team is just, which understandably so, like, this team is just not even remotely close to being
A
like, nobody
contender.
should take this team seriously with Joe
Yeah.
Burrow not being out there. And, like, yeah, that's obvious. What team is really going to be that good without their starting quarterback? But, like, they have so much money invested into 3 guys that they're not able to improve around the edges anywhere else on this team. And, like, you can't necessarily survive when you start out slow like that. And
Yeah.
that's just not how you want to start every season, year in and year out. And now Joe Burrow's healthy. He's got his two guys, but like this defense is really bad.
Mhm.
And I know that they made an effort in free agency to bring in some guys, but like it's a lot of 1 and 2 year deals, like a lot of let's take a shot on this type of player, but I, I don't know. I don't love the amount of money that they're putting on into three guys.
Oh no, I mean how could you at this point? But one thing I said this. I said the Joe Burrow tenure has been a bit overrated. It's
Yeah,
not because
yeah,
of him, and the reason I'm saying that is just strictly on the front office and most importantly ownership. And there's a lot of people who have covered this over the years where the Bengals organization isn't a cash rich organization. So they look to backload a lot of their contracts, which puts their cap situation in the worst possible situation that you could have. As in other situations like the Eagles, they will pay a lot of the money up front in like a signing bonus, for example.
yeah,
So them backloading these contracts puts them at a disadvantage, and that's just because of what they are as an organization. They are not like a cash rich organization. If they acted early, and I saw this tweet, they would have had Jesse Bates for $12 million a year, a guy that they've been missing ever since he's walked out the door. T. Higgins for $23 million a year, Jamar Chase for $35 million a year, and Trey Hendrickson for $25 million a year, which that's another thing looming right now is he obviously asked for a trade and he wants to get paid. Um, it just feels like time and time again that the only people to be mad at in this situation is I think the head coach and I think the ownership and the front office because they have gotten dumb luck almost in a way to they obviously nailed the T. Higgins pick at the top of the second round. You have Jamar Chase practically fall into your lap, and then you have Joe Burrow practically fall into your lap, and those guys are just generational talents.
yeah, yeah. And the year that they won or that they made it to the Super Bowl and the year that they made it to the AFC Championship and lost, those were seasons where they actually hit on some of those draft picks and those younger guys were playing well, and then everybody left the building, right? Because nobody in the Bengals front office wanted to open the checkbook for any of those guys. And yeah, that's not Joe Burrow's fault at all. But this is kind of Joe Burrow's fault now. And if they
Yeah.
don't get it done with Joe Burrow going on his press tour complaining about how he wants these two guys around,
And
rightfully
Gesicki.
so, and Mike Gesicki, and like I get it. I would want weapons too if I'm Joe Burrow, right? But like you got to be able to build the rest of your team up. And if they don't get it done now, after he went out there and made all these comments about opening the checkbooks and signing these guys, like it's going to be on him too, because he was the one that went out there and was talking about all of this. And
This
they
is
finally opened up the checkbook, and here we are.
yeah, and if you just look at the list of players that have walked out of the building over the years, like even Joe Mixon played at a high level last year. He walked out of the building. Logan Wilson has Joe Mixon. Logan Wilson has retired. Jesse Bates, DJ Reader has walked out the door. There's just
Yeah.
guys that were game changers for them during their two deep runs in the playoffs that have walked out of the building. And like you said, they've tried to do draft guys in replacement of those guys that they are preparing for them to walk out of the building, but they just haven't hit on any of them.
No, they haven't. And they really need to do an impressive job this draft to they have to improve the secondary. Giving up what did I say here?
There's
30
multiple
passing touchdowns.
there's
Fourth worst in the NFL.
there's multiple and let me know what you think about this. I feel like this team has multiple issues. Like it's not just the secondary. I don't think that they have an edge rusher. If Trey Hendrickson walks out of the door, and I don't think anybody in the world would think that he's elite. He does have good seasons, but he walks out of the door, you don't have an edge rusher. I think that their D line's weak. I don't know anybody in their linebacking core. Their secondary is weak. And something that has always come up time and time again is this offensive line, which they have brought in journeymen, like big journeymen, to try to like fill in those tackle spots and fill in around the gaps, but they have just flat not worked. So I think that, and even I know Chase Brown was like a cute story last year and he's decent, but I think that if you were to ask them, like, would you like to upgrade the running back position? I think that the answer would probably be yes. So I think they have the quarterback and wide receivers down, like good for them. But quite literally every single other position on the field for them is a spot that they are probably looking to improve heavily.
So the reason I specifically pointed out secondary was because the guys that they did resign or sign in free agency were a lot of defensive linemen.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Joseph Asai, Cam Sample, BJ Hill, TJ Slayton, 4 defensive linemen that they signed or re-signed in free agency. So like that's why I mentioned the secondary. But you're right either way. I think all levels of this defense need improvements, especially if you lose your number one edge rusher. And they're in a tough spot now because what are they going to do? Are they going to sit there and pay him? Because I think he's been very good. I agree. I don't think he's been necessarily elite, but I think he's been a very, very good pass rusher. And for them to wrap another, what, 15-20% of their salary cap in
just doesn't make much sense.
it makes no sense.
Yeah.
So
he's also not, I know that like he might be like there's a reason why the Bengals can't move him. The Bengals are asking for like a first round pick, and every team in the NFL are like, let's get real. Like
yeah.
Trey Hendrickson is a like chubby white dude that wears tight long sleeves and no gloves. Like he's not aesthetically pleasing. If he looked like Myles Garrett, then sure, like ask for whatever you want, but he just doesn't look the part, no matter how productive he is.
He has been elite the last 2 years. 17 and a half sacks the last 2 seasons. That's impressive.
I know he has, but I'm just saying, like the eye test wise, like if you're looking at him, like you're like, okay, like this guy is not our cornerstone edge rusher. Which the Bengals have to feel that way too, because they're hesitant to give him a massive contract.
Which is crazy. Maybe not necessarily crazy because he's 30, but he's put up 2 phenomenal seasons. He has another season.
Myles Garrett was the highest paid non-quarterback for 15 minutes, but
no, I know, but Myles Garrett's also
30.
The third best player in the NFL.
How many sacks did Myles Garrett have last year?
But he does it he puts up that number every year.
But that's exactly what I'm getting at.
I know. I'm not saying you're wrong.
If he looked like Max Crosby, he's getting the bag.
Yeah, if he was sober, he would be.
If he looked like Max Crosby, he would be getting the bag. But he doesn't. So
yeah,
that's just something that we need to take into account. He doesn't pass the eye test.
But yeah, they can't wrap up another 15-20% of their cap in.
I would hope not.
Trey Hendrickson. And if they do, like, great, they'll keep 4 really good players, but that makes your margin for error everywhere else so much smaller.
Correct. And I do want to say that I want to wrap this up by saying everyone is so against this that I almost feel like I'm going to zag the other way and say it's going to work.
Well, they're going to have 12,000 yards of offense.
Every single person that is like on Twitter saying like, oh, like they're screwed, they're cooked, like blah, blah, blah. I don't hate these contracts. You sign these guys onto contracts for 4 years. You have Joe Burrow locked up long term. They might struggle this year, but let's just hypothetically say they land a great draft class and the cap continues to spike. They're going to look like geniuses, but it really comes down to let's get this draft right.
They have to. There's so much riding on this draft.
But I do think I like the direction that they're going to go. It's just wonky at first, but if the cap continues to grow, which it seems like there's no reason why the cap won't keep going up every single year, these would be team-friendly deals at this point. I also heard someone kind of allude to the fact of like there are going to be players that will come. Like somebody said, Nico Collins at $24 million a year, like looks like a bargain. I think TJ Watt said this, and then I forget what I was listening to, but they alluded to the fact of like what's stopping Nico Collins being like, I want a restructured deal to make more money now that the cap is at X amount. There's going to be a point where you are going to have to keep the guys that you have in-house just as happy as well. And I know that isn't how things have been done in the past, but these NFL contracts have been getting more contentious. Guys have been way more outspoken, and I think that could definitely be something that could be something to monitor over the next few years. Where, for example, like Patrick Mahomes is like underpaid at this point, like compared to the rest of the market.
Yeah.
And like, at what point is he going to be like, yeah, like it's time for me to restructure this 10-year deal so I'm the highest paid player in the NFL? Like, probably pretty soon.
Which is crazy because the Chiefs just have spent their money so poorly.
Yeah.
And just handcuffing themselves into another, which is it really handcuffing yourself if you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback? No.
Probably not.
But just haven't been smart with who they've brought onto their team.
But that's just something that I want
to
monitor over time, where like that could be a possibility. Like there might, in 2 years, T. Higgins might have 2 years. I mean, Jamar Chase might have 2 years left on his contract. And if Malik Neighbors is the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL and he hasn't done half of what Jamar Chase has done, Jamar Chase is going to be like, yeah, we need to rework this deal because I'm the best player in the NFL. And I think that is just going to be the continued reality of that.
Yeah, that's like it's going to be like the NBA version of I want a trade. But it'll be with contracts for the NFL.
Yeah, it's because it seems like everybody's been able to keep their guys. None of the big names that we talked about during this offseason have really moved. It's all been figured out contractually, which it seems like that's the only thing that matters. It seems like guys want to stay with their teams. It feels like that's a common theme in the NFL. People don't really team hop. If they go somewhere, they stay there for a really long time. I mean, even Stephon Diggs, for example, like he played for 2 teams his entire career, but he was on the Bills for a while. He was on the Vikings for a while, but it just feels like guys aren't like as willing to team hop. They just want that money.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I respect, like the whole contract thing rather than trade me. Because I like seeing these guys stay on these teams. Like, yeah, it's cool. Like in the off season, whatever, like trades, new signings, whatever. But like at the end of the day, like watching T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow on the offensive side of the football is really fun as a fan.
For sure.
It's such a dynamic offense when those 3 are out there. It's really great. T. Higgins basically won me a fantasy championship, so I'm forever indebted to him.
Yeah, I love T. Higgins. I love T. Higgins. I think he's extremely underrated. So I'm right with you.
Things changed for me in fantasy football now in a potential keeper league because I have T. Higgins and I was seriously not going to keep him, but after this deal, I have to consider him.
Yeah, I'm not even talking. That's the fakest keeper league of all time. I don't even want to hear about that. Noah is in like the most like candy shop fucking fantasy league I've ever heard in my entire life.
Listen, I'm just the messenger. I'm not the commissioner.
Okay. Well, hey, I'm just saying. Do you have anything else that you want to add in about the Bengals, or are we cool to move on?
I think we're good.
The next thing is, what the hell are the Steelers doing? The Steelers trade for DK Metcalf for a 2nd-round pick and then pay him 5 years, $150 million contract. The first thing that really comes to my head is when you're building a receiver room, this is like the oldest saying in the book. Like, you want to build it like a basketball team. Like, I'm sure you've heard that analogy before. And it just feels like DK Metcalf and George Pickens do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
They are deep ball winners. And I don't think either of them are guys that are going to like take a hit. I mean, I know DK Metcalf looks like he can, but if you've watched him since he's come into the NFL, he plays a little soft for like how big he is and how strong he is. And I just think that having two guys, DK Metcalf and Pickens, who are deep ball winners with no QB, might be one of the most bizarre. Like people are giving shit to the Bengals for having two high paid wide receivers of guys who earned it. Like you gave DK Metcalf 5 years, $150 million, not far off of this Jamar Chase contract. And I just don't think DK Metcalf really deserves it. And I just don't see why bringing him in with no quarterback was like a move that they thought that they needed to make.
Contract aside, and I spoke about the Steelers last pod and how they just aren't an aggressive team when it comes to deals and like things like this. I respect the fact that the Steelers went out there and tried to make a significant improvement to a wide receiver room that's not good. And I think DK Metcalf improves that receiver room, regardless of him and Pickens being similar. But yeah,
but is that what they needed?
They didn't, because they don't have a quarterback. Right now, it's Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson, I believe, that are the only two rostered quarterbacks on their team. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're waiting for Aaron Rodgers to make a decision, but like anytime you're waiting for a 41-year-old quarterback to make his decision, you're probably not in the best space. So, you're
if
likely going to end
Aaron
up.
Rodgers into the Aaron Rodgers is cooked. Like
Oh no, I
put your
agree.
hat put your hat on it, stamp it. Aaron Rodgers is cooked. If that's who you're waiting for in the free agency period, okay, you have a quarterback who is 41 years old, 42 years old, whatever. He's cooked, and like there's really not much to talk about there. That's just like even if they get Rodgers or not get Rodgers, the available quarterback options
are bad
right now are bad.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter who they get in the quarterback room. It could be Russ, it could be Aaron Rodgers. Like that's not gonna make a difference, in my opinion, on who the Steelers are as a team at all.
No, I completely agree with you. That's what I was saying is if you're waiting for a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers to make his decision if he wants to sign with you or not as a starting quarterback, you're probably not in that great of a spot offensively or as an organization. So
no, not at all. And another thing that I think that isn't talked about enough is this is the most aging defense in the NFL. Yeah. I forget the exact stat, but there was a point in time last season where TJ Watt went over 100 snaps without recording a stat on like on the stat sheet. They signed Darius Slay. Darius Slay is cooked. Like I don't know why anybody would want to bring him in, even if it's on a 1-year deal, to try to bolster up that secondary. It makes no sense to me. Like Cam Hayward, for example, this defense, we said it to start the year last year and halfway through the year. This defense was a lead at the beginning of the year. And after a certain point, when you're asking a unit and a group to do so much, they just fell off of a cliff. Like they quite literally fell off a cliff, and that defense stunk in the back half of the season.
Yeah, it was bad. And that's normally what they can hang their hat on, is why they end up hanging around in some of these seasons. But I mean, I do agree with you. I think Slay is that last season was the last good year we'll realistically get from Darius Slay, but that secondary, those corners on the Steelers are not good. So I think he'll be better than what they had, but what is that really saying? You're right. This defense is getting old, and adding a 32-year-old corner to the mix probably isn't like the greatest move, but it's better than what you had.
It's just timeline with them. They're in a division with. I know they
don't have a timeline. What's the Steelers' timeline?
that's the issue. They don't have that. The timeline that they're on should be like a rebuilding timeline. Instead, they continue to go all in more and more. What's the point of going all in when the ceiling of this team is a first round elimination? You have it. We're approaching a literal decade since the last time the Steelers have won a playoff game, and they do the same song and dance every single season. And I think that they fall off of a cliff this year badly. I think this is the year that it's over for them and they're cooked, because the moves that they make are an indication of a team who is gearing up to make a Super Bowl run, and this team is the furthest thing away from a Super Bowl run that you could possibly be. I know the fans probably, some of the fans are like split on that and think that they're very close, and some of the fans are realistic and say like, we want Tomlin fired because he just doesn't do it for us anymore. So that's something that they need to address. Like when the Eagles went, for example, and traded for AJ Brown, that was a move to complete their team. They had everything else in place. You go out and get DK Metcalf, who, in my personal opinion, I just don't think DK Metcalf is elite. I just don't really see, I just am not seeing it with no quarterback when you have to address that position. I mean, what are you going to do at this point? Big Ben was their last quarterback that was worth a damn.
Yeah.
And he hasn't been in the league for almost 10 years. So it's just like, you got to figure it out. You have to figure it out. Something needs to change. The fans seem like they like the idea of bringing back Justin Fields. It felt like the biggest like hope play, even though me and you aren't big on Fields, it seems like. But I could see that from a fan perspective, being like, okay, we get a guy that's in the building who's 25 years old, who could potentially, he won us 6 games last season. Like, let's see what he can do. You let him walk out of the door, and now you're fighting between Russ and Aaron Rodgers, who both are the corpses of themselves at this point in their career. And it's just, you got to hang it up.
Within the last 10 years, I feel like it's safe to say that the Steelers have been like one of the most poorly run organizations in the NFL.
I would have to agree with you.
They have no timeline. They have no they have no plan, it seems like. They don't know what they want to do, and they just try to run the same thing. Like, they're the definition of insanity, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Bring in a mid-level quarterback, rely on your defense. You go 9-8, losing the first round of the playoffs. What we've seen that year in and year out since Big Ben has left Pittsburgh, and they haven't done anything differently. They just haven't made any. There's no
evolution.
There's no vision for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Or evolution. They do the same. They are the same team every single year, and it's just, it's hard to watch. That's pretty much all there is to it. It's hard to watch. So
I will say, I think a lot of Steelers fans are getting, that I know at least, are to the point of like, we're fed up with the way that this is going. Yeah,
they're done. I'm completely with you.
How can you not be? You sit there, like I said, and you watch the same season play out year in and year out.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Do you have anything else that you want to add in on the Steelers?
I mean, I guess they're lucky that, I don't know. They're lucky that the Bengals aren't going to have any defense. The Browns are really bad, and the Ravens are obviously really good, but like, they still might be able to finish second at 9-8 in that division for the next couple of years.
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe,
I mean,
yeah.
The Browns won 11 games 2 seasons ago. The Bengals go 9-8 every single year. Like, they're not above being the worst team in that division, I don't think. And I think throwing in Aaron Rodgers into the equation, like, anything's possible. I mean, that guy is like the definition of like a locker room cancer.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like, make up your mind, Aaron.
Fuck it.
There's what, 3 teams there's 2 teams that need a starting quarterback that would consider a guy like Aaron Rodgers. It feels like it's the Steelers and the Giants, maybe the Giants. But like I know there was Vikings rumors going around, but I don't even understand what sense that makes if you're the Vikings to bring in Aaron Rodgers.
Well, they already put that to rest today. They're not doing that. They said
yeah,
that to me, so
good. I'm glad because you have a rookie quarterback. I would want to know coming into it, like, hey, you're our guy. We drafted you. Like, this is going to be your offense. I would not want to deal with Aaron Rodgers in the locker room and all the things that come with it.
Completely with you. Anything else with the Steelers?
Nope, I'm good on them.
I forgot to text you this, but it kind of leads right into this. The Seahawks have had maybe the most, in recent memory, one of the worst off seasons that I could remember. Like, I just don't understand what they're doing. And I'm going to recap it. Just, they traded away Geno Smith for a third. They traded away DK Metcalf for a second. They released Tyler Lockett. You sign a 31-year-old Cooper Kupp to a 3-year deal. Bizarre. And then you sign a 32-year-old DeMarcus Lawrence to a 2-year contract.
3-year,
3-year contract. Completely confused on the direction. Talk about like direction and where they're going. This team won 10 games last season and could have easily been a playoff team if one win or loss went their way in week 17. And how they responded to it was they didn't get a haul for Geno Smith. They got a third. Okay, it is what it is. You get a going rate for a wide receiver of DK Metcalf's like status and stature in recent memory has been multiple picks that include a first round pick as well. DJ Moore was included in was used as a first round pick in that Panthers deal. The AJ Brown deal, the Tyreek Hill deal, like there were multiple picks and first round picks involved in that deal. And to not even get multiple picks in this deal in just 1 second, I just don't understand. If you weren't going to get a haul back for DK Metcalf, you should have just kept him. Because if you dealt DK Metcalf last year, you're getting a first for him. Yeah. And I think what happens now is if you are holding on to a guy and you go and trade him to a team, and in return, that team is going to sign him to a long-term contract, that automatically diminishes his value from an asset standpoint of what teams are willing to give up. So at that point, why not just sign DK Metcalf to a long-term deal? And if things aren't going well with him in a year, trade him away, and he's under contract, and you could probably retrieve more for him at that point. So I just thought that was a weird move. And then the Geno Smith move, I infamously think Geno Smith is a top 10 quarterback, and everybody thinks I'm insane, but there are a ton of metrics and stats that put him in the top like 15 quarterbacks in the NFL with a lot of what he does in the NFL. I think Geno Smith is a good quarterback in the league. What happened last season with Sam Darnold, if you dive into the advanced metrics and dive into everything with him, he was a middle of the pack quarterback at best. And what we saw from him is the best version of what we're ever going to see Sam Darnold have, because he just went from a team who has Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in football, a great O-line, a great defense, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, all of these great weapons across the board. And what you immediately do is get rid of Geno Smith, buy Sam Darnold at the peak. And at his peak, he is a mid quarterback based on last season, even with all of the weapons that he had around him last year. Why are we supposed to sit here and expect that Sam Darnold is going to walk into Seattle and do exactly what he did in Minnesota, and that is be a middle tier quarterback with all of the great weapons that they had in Minnesota? I think that it made no sense. How it's been framed that I've heard is, well, if they hit on Sam Darnold, he's younger and it gives them like a little bit more of like a period. Sam Darnold stinks. And if you're the team who was dumb enough to sign the guy who has stunk his entire career after having an average season, you are going to be left holding the bag. And I personally think that Seahawks had the worst offseason imaginable in recent memory. And I think that this Sam Darnold move and everything that they've done, getting rid of Geno Smith, etc., is definitely going to leave them holding the bag and look like one of the worst organizations in the NFL because Sam Darnold just is not a good quarterback.
This is going to be a disaster for Seattle. He is going Sam Darnold, great season compared to his previous seasons. Good for him. He got paid. The only logical explanation for this is you're resetting the timeline, but I think that's just like a lazy excuse. And it's the only possible way that if you're a Seattle Seahawks fan, you can spin this scenario to make yourself feel good. Because you're getting a guy that had his best season of his NFL career with a guy that is a better coach than your head coach, better offensive line than your offensive line, better defense than your defense, better weapons than your weapons, and clearly a smarter front office than your front office. So I don't know what else you can, like, how else you can feel if you're a Seattle Seahawks fan about this situation other than, oh no, because I'll tell you what, Justin Jefferson's not walking through that door. Kevin O'Connell's not walking through that door. TJ Hawkinson's not walking through that door. Cooper Kupp, sure, yeah, he once was great, but like he's definitely falling off. You still have Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I think is great, but
I love JSN.
But your offensive line is much worse. Darnold, you got to keep him upright. Your tight end is what, Noah Fant, not even close to compared to TJ Hawkinson. And the thing that Mike McDonald, is that his name?
Yeah.
The thing that he was supposed to be known for is having that great of a defense, and like Brian Flores outcoached him on defense last season. So like I don't understand what the Seattle Seahawks thought process here was. I think they're going to be in for a rude awakening this year and the next 2 years with these contracts to Sam Darnold and to Cooper Kupp.
What did Cooper Kupp get paid? 3 years what?
45.
Cooper Kupp has, how many times has he played a full season in his career?
Probably the last full season that he played was when he won.
He played 8 years. He played 8 years in the NFL. How many of those seasons did he play a full year?
Probably 3.
1. He's played.
Was it the Triple Crown year?
He's played one full season in the NFL. I like Cooper Kupp, but his career is extremely, extremely overrated by every word. He's had one good season, and I hate the fact that they thought bringing in a 32-year-old was a good idea when I think that him and JSN are smart enough and will figure out. But talk about two guys that do they play the exact same position.
Yeah.
So they are probably best both suited in the slot. So I just think that it was a bad move. Why get rid of DK Metcalf and bring in Cooper Kupp? It just really doesn't make any sense. You didn't want to pay Geno Smith. Why? Geno Smith is people do this all the time. Somebody said to me the other day, like, oh, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't pay Brock Purdy. Like, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do that. It's like, why? Why in the world would you not want to pay Brock Purdy? Look at what the Giants go through every year. Look at what the Browns go through for the last 20 years. Look at what the Jets have gone through the last 20 years. They can't get somebody in the building who has a clue. So why would you get rid of somebody who clearly has a clue, who can clearly play elite football, who was like a bad one loss away from making the playoffs last season, and he's been successful as a starter since he started in Seattle? Why would you get rid of him for somebody who's never done it and has shown when it mattered most at the end of last season that he just couldn't get it done? So I just think, like I said, I think you're completely right. I think the Seahawks team is in full free fall mode.
Yeah, it's going to be really ugly. I don't even know where, like, they have to draft somebody on this offensive line. I think the defensive line's probably okay, but like this offensive line was really bad last year,
Yeah.
and Geno Smith did a lot to kind of make up for that. But I, talk about buying high. We saw it happen with Baker Mayfield. Um, Although Baker Mayfield should like put out film previously to more than one season of competent football, and then he got paid. Sam Darnold has one season in probably like a top 5 offensive situation that you could have been in the NFL, and now he's probably going to like a bottom 10 offensive situation in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. And everybody's like hyping up like Kenny Walker. And I was like, Kenny Walker barely plays football.
I love Kenny Walker, but he does not play.
Like,
he misses like 6 games a year.
So I think that like everybody has like rose-colored lenses on like a few plays that they've seen Kenny Walker have in his career. Like, don't hit me with that. Like, I think JSN is supremely talented, but I think that like look at what their receiving core was last year. Like Tyler Lockett, which I still think Tyler Lockett can play at a decent level. Like if you were gonna get rid of Tyler Lockett and bring in Cooper Kupp, I think at this point in their career, those guys are practically the same player.
They brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling on a 1-year, $5.5 million deal. You're telling me you couldn't give that to Tyler Lockett?
I think that if you're sitting here, if you were looking at me right now and saying the Seahawks got rid of Geno, brought in Sam Darnold, but they still have Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and JSN and their existing core, and they're adding on defense and adding to the offensive line, I'd be like, you know what? This makes sense for what they're trying to do
Completely agree.
Maybe that would make sense then, where if it hits with Sam Darnold, you're hitting on it with him at 27 years old compared to a 34-year-old Geno Smith, and it extends the timeline longer. But on every indication says that this team isn't interested in bottoming out. This was a move where they thought that this could get them over the humps and into the playoffs, and I think that they're brutally mistaken. So we can move on, but I just the Seahawks, it's a damn shame whatever happened this offseason with them.
Yeah, they downgraded every position that they tried to improve.
100%.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly for them this upcoming season, I'm afraid.
All right, last thing here, and we can move on to the Saints and the Panthers. I just wanted to, and I forgot to text you about this too. Anthony Richardson's future in the NFL right now is obviously dwindling. And my question to you, and then we can talk about Anthony Richardson's situation, is why does Chris Ballard have a job? Since he's been taking the job in 2017 with the Colts, his quarterbacks have been Andrew Luck, Scott Tolzien, Jacoby Brissett, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Sam Ellinger, Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco, and now officially Daniel Jones. What an awful list of quarterbacks, because this isn't, we're not talking about them for people that might have forgot. This was end of career Phillip Rivers. This was washed Carson Wentz. This was end of career Matt Ryan. This was 44-year-old Joe Flacco. This is them constantly taking swings at guys who are over the hump, who's not good. You spend a top 5 pick on Anthony Richardson 2 years ago, and the only story that you heard going into the draft is Anthony Richardson is supremely talented. He has 14 starts, and if you take him, you are taking him and being under the impression that this is going to be a complete developmental quarterback, and he has a lot of tools, but he needs to be completely whipped into shape. Nobody said that this was a guy who you were going to insert into the lineup and become generational, and the entire team was going to be amazing. No one framed it as that, but that is how they treated him thus far in his career. Obviously, there has been some hiccups with Anthony Richardson, with him being able to stay healthy, him not being as good as advertised, even maybe as people thought, which is completely fine. That happens. But at this point, the Colts organization just flat like hate the dude. And like the stories that they're leaking about him being a bad leader and stuff that he's doing in the locker room and him not taking his conditioning and training, as like the fact that you are doing that to a guy that you spent a top 5 pick on 2 years ago just goes to show you that the front office has no clue what they're doing. And if you weren't ready to develop a quarterback who, as somebody like Anthony Richardson, you should have never taken a shot on him in the top 5. I don't think that the Colts, I don't think Anthony Richardson's been great, but I don't think the Colts have done enough to try to develop him into a quarterback that they are trying to make the future of their franchise. So, and now they bring in somebody like Daniel Jones, which I don't know if this is a opportunity for them to have Anthony Richardson just clearly win a quarterback competition between him and Daniel Jones, because it should be winnable for him, or
Yeah.
this is a complete slap in the face, which wouldn't shock me at this point because they've leaked stories to Pat McAfee, they leaked stories to reporters, they leaked stories to ESPN. This organization is such a laughing stock, and I think that Anthony Richardson's future is definitely in question. And I wonder if I feel like at this point, like, just trade the guy. You clearly hate him. They hate Anthony Richardson.
I admittedly was the biggest Anthony Richards stan when he was coming out. But I knew that this was going to be a process. Before I get there, I will say this too. I think the Colts have like done a decent job of like building their roster, but no matter how much good you can do building a roster, if you have that many bad quarterbacks in a row, there's no reason that you should be a GM. So yeah, to answer your original question, I don't know how he is still the GM. Because that is an awful string of quarterbacks that he's been associated with.
All time bad.
But yeah, I was a very big Anthony Richards stan when he was coming out of college. I knew that this was going to be a process, and the Colts had to have known the same thing. You said what? He played 14 games
in college.
Like, that's nowhere near enough. And then for him to go out there and get hurt his rookie season, I think he played 3 or 4 games his rookie year, something like that.
5. I don't remember.
Not many. Basically, 2024 was his rookie season, and it seems like they've already decided that they want to turn the page on him. If they were serious about this Anthony Richardson development, they would be doing everything that they possibly can to boost this guy's confidence, to make sure that he has everything he needs from a roster standpoint, which I think they have a good roster on paper. I think he has good weapons to throw the football to, but
I agree.
They have to be able to display confidence and patience. I know that it has been ugly, but there's been some plays that Anthony Richardson makes that are like, okay, nobody else in the NFL is doing that. And if you can just like, you have to stay patient when you draft a guy that's played 14 games. And clearly the Colts are not going to be patient in this situation. I look at the Daniel Jones signing as like, yes, I am for competition, and I think Anthony Richardson should win that job. But like, that seems like their way of being like, okay, well, if we don't do our job developing this guy, we can just fall back on Daniel Jones, who is a worse version of, like, from a talent standpoint, I think Daniel Jones he can throw the football like a little bit better, but like, he's not really that much better than Anthony Richardson.
I personally think that Daniel Jones at this point has gone through like very major injuries. Like, he's tore his knee, he's hurt his neck. Like, I don't think that I used to like Daniel Jones. I used to kind of defend him. I used to think he's not awful. I don't think we'll ever get that version of Daniel Jones again. He's had very
No,
major
we won't.
injuries. I think what it really comes down to is Anthony Richardson right now just isn't good at doing like the easy stuff.
Correct. He
And
makes everything hard on himself.
he makes everything hard on himself, but he does make some exceptional plays. And something that Kevin O'Connell said last year when he was doing miracle work with Sam Darnold, who everybody in the league was giving up on, he said there are more organizations and teams that fail quarterbacks than quarterbacks fail organizations and teams.
100%.
And I think that this is a great visual of what is going on in Indianapolis. Is this organization never gave Anthony Richardson a chance. And I get it. I understand that he's not maybe the most mature guy that you thought that you were going to get or whatever, but that all comes with the territory. Everybody knew this about Anthony. Everybody knew all of this about Anthony Richardson when he was coming out in the draft 2 years ago, going to be 3 years at this point. And I don't know why they got him. And then it was like a shock to everybody. So shame on the Indianapolis Colts organization for honestly dismantling Anthony Richardson up to this point.
I think they're just starting to feel the pressure because you look around, even inside your own division, and I know that CJ Stroud wasn't amazing last year, but like you see the Texans, they hit on their rookie quarterback, and CJ Stroud had a great rookie season, and then you see Daniel Jones on the Commanders, and he obviously had an incredible rookie season.
Daniel Jones on the Commanders?
Jaden Daniels, sorry. Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels on the Commanders, and he had an incredible rookie season, and like even Drake May like has shown really good flashes, and like you're seeing rookie quarterbacks around the league show flashes that hey, they can be the guy. And you're not really seeing that from Anthony Richardson at this point, but like he just doesn't have the same amount of games under his belt as some of those other guys in the first place. And I think Anthony Richardson could end up being like kind of a lesser situation with Justin Fields because of all the talent that he has. I could see him just kind of bouncing around and just kind of being that guy that's like, oh, like we can fix him. And then it just like never happens. I think that's the path that he's almost headed on right now.
I'm completely with you. Do you have anything else? Sorry, I didn't text you about that either, but that just fired me up. I want to talk about Aaron Rodgers and the future of the mid QBs, but I don't think that there's much. I think that, and if you want to add anything, you can. At this point, like I thought there'd be more of a discussion to be had around those guys. I'm done having the talks about them. They're just washed, and I don't think they even have a place in the NFL as starters. They're going to get an opportunity to, but I just don't think that they're good.
Yeah, I don't think I'm glad that I'm not sitting here and hearing conversation on all these different podcasts about where Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson are going to play, because quite frankly, I don't care, and they're not good enough to win a Super Bowl no matter what team you put them on. Yeah, so the fact that nobody's talking about them on a daily basis is great. I mean, ESPN probably is because they care about that type of thing, but like,
yeah, I have no idea. I don't think you watch ESPN. I'd never throw on ESPN. So
no, but like, it's not fun. I don't care about where Aaron Rodgers is going to go play. If he goes to Pittsburgh, like we mentioned earlier, they're going to win maybe 9 or 8 games, and like, it'll be a same old Steelers season. If the Giants decide, hey, we don't want to draft a quarterback, or we're going to wait until next year and they sign Russell Wilson, great. They're going to win 6 games, and
maybe they're going to
they're going to be bad. And at the end of the day, like, that's not the football discourse that I care about and that I care to have. Like, I'd much rather sit here and talk about the significance of the Seattle Seahawks blowing up their franchise by bringing on Sam Darnold.
Me too, brother.
So I'm glad that the people that we listen to are not talking about Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson on a daily basis. I think it's a waste of conversation.
Completely agree. All right, cool. Well, let's do the Saints and the Panthers.
All right. Let me see here. So 2024 Carolina Panthers went 5-12, finished third in the NFC South.
Sneaky.
Sneaky. I will say this. I think we were a year away on the Carolina Panthers. I believe last season we thought that they were going to win like 7 games, and they
We were a
somehow
year
ended
early.
up. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They finished with 5.
I do think, real quick, sorry, and then you can keep going. And I don't think nobody everybody absolutely quit on what's his name, on Bryce Young. We never quit on Bryce Young. We actually thought the Panthers were going to win 7 games. We thought they'd be really good. Honestly, everybody picked them to have like the worst record in the NFL. We were not on that. We actually had some high hopes for the Panthers. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, there was a stretch towards the middle of 2024 where they were right in a lot of these football games against some really good teams. They did beat the Giants week 10. Then they had a bye week, and then they played the Chiefs in week 12 and lost on a last-second field goal. They played the Bucs the following week and lost on a field goal. They played the Eagles the week after and lost by a touchdown.
That should have been an Eagles loss.
Basically at the buzzer, right? Like he played a lot better football towards the end of that season. And I think if you're a Panthers fan, you have to feel really good about basically the last third of the season for Bryce Young and for the Carolina Panthers.
And shout out Bryce Young. Shout out Bryce Young for getting benched, never quitting, coming back and balling out and doing his thing. Like that guy, I really think he might be built different, but go ahead.
I do want to just talk about the guys that they've brought in free agency. So
let's hear it.
To start it off, J.C. Horn gets paid on his extension, a 4-year, $100 million deal, $70 million guaranteed. What do you think about that?
I think J.C. Horn's one of the most underrated corners in the entire NFL. I think
when he's out there, he's phenomenal.
I think it's fair to critique him for his injury history, but his injury stuff has just been so bizarre. It hasn't been anything major. So I don't think it's even that big of a deal that they went ahead and paid him. And that's what you want to do. Everybody that like thinks that like that's not something. As an organization, you want to draft a guy and you want to get him to a point where you re-up him on a contract. That is the best possible thing that you could want as an organization. So shout out JC Horn. I actually hung out with him in person. He is literally big as hell. He's like 6'3" or 6'2", 6'3". He's like really he's a massive corner.
That's your prototypical lockdown corner.
And he's like a big body bull. Like, so I think he's super underrated. And I think that was like the smartest thing that the Panthers could do is keep a young guy in their building who's going to be really good for them.
Yeah, they pretty much locked down their starting corners this offseason, which is great for them. They also re-signed Michael Jackson, not the singer, for $14.5 million over 2 years. So they've got their starting corners set in Carolina for this upcoming season. They also brought in who else did they bring in here? They signed Rico Dowdle as a backup running back. Nothing really crazy.
It.
No, I don't hate it as a compliment to Chuba Hubbard.
They got Adam Thielen back.
And they currently sit here with the 8th pick in the NFL draft. What do you think the Carolina Panthers do at 8?
I know that this might be something that you might not agree with, and a lot of people don't. I think that the Panthers at this point are going to be picking between either Abdul Carter or Mason Graham at that 8 spot, depending on which way the Jets go. I think you could probably talk me into the Jets not taking Mason Graham because they have Quentin Williams. But I think that those are going to be the 2 guys that they're going to be picking for. And at that point, it's just best available. You're going to take the best guys available on defense. I said this to somebody the other day, and they're like, dude, don't get too cute. Like, you're overthinking it, like, blah, blah, blah. I'm not overthinking it.
If both of those guys are there, why would you pick whoever
people
you like
are saying
more?
Because Abdul Carter is going to be the number 1 overall pick. I think the Titans take a quarter. I think Titans take quarterback, so I think it's like Cam Ward, and then I think Cleveland Browns take Shador Sanders, and then let's just say 3 hypothetically. I think that the Giants go Will Howard, then I think the New England Patriots go Travis Hunter, I think the Jags go Tet McMillan, I think the Raiders go Will Johnson, and then at 7 the Jets could go Mason Graham or Abdul Carter, and then at 8 the Panthers could either have their pick of Abdul Carter or Mason Graham. I don't think that is like that crazy of a take. And just the way that the board's going to be playing out, I think those 2 defensive players might be the most talented defensive players in the entire draft, other than Will Johnson, the corner, who I think is going to be really good. But I think that's the pick that they could possibly have. And I think that could be a massive cornerstone for them for a long time.
So we're not just going to glance over you saying Will Howard to the Giants at 3.
I didn't say that.
Who did you say? Will Johnson?
No, I said Will. Yeah, Will Howard. Will Campbell.
Okay, I was going to say, holy shit.
No, Will Campbell, the tackle.
The tackle from LSU, yeah.
Yeah.
You said Will Howard. I was like, wait a minute.
No. Will Campbell, the tackle.
No, I got you. That's totally understandable. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, if those guys are both available, I think you've got to be absolutely thrilled if you're the Carolina Panthers.
You're just going to be it's literally you. I think the Panthers are going to be at a point where if they're going to have a point where Tet McMillan might fall if he doesn't go 5.
Yeah.
Abdul Carter or Mason Graham. And I think that those 3 guys, I just think that is like you're like salivating if those are who you're picking from, honestly. If that's how it
three guys that could easily be top 5 in a lot of other drafts. Like they were all like top 5 guys coming into the draft this season.
Yes, exactly. And just the way that teams need quarterbacks, they might luck out and get one of these guys at the pick that they're at. What do you think that they do?
I mean, I can't disagree with you. If those guys are there, I think you can't go wrong with any of them. I think they probably do need some help at wide receiver, but because I think that Adam Thielen is 33?
Yeah, he's old.
34. And like, who was the guy that they drafted from South Carolina last year with the accent? I'm drawing a blank on his name. Let me see here.
Xavier Legette.
Yeah. I don't know the type of production that he necessarily had, but also I think it's fair to consider the fact that Bryce Young really didn't turn it on until the later half of the season. So like those numbers are likely going to be skewed. I don't think you closed the book on Xavier Legette by any means, but like
my only memory of Xavier Legette is him dropping the touchdown to win against
the Eagles. Yeah. Yeah. But also like, how many games did you watch with the Carolina Panthers besides like the last couple of minutes if they ended up being close?
All of them. He had decent games. Yeah, he had some decent games. I wouldn't say he jumped off the page though.
Well, I don't think it's worth closing the book on him yet. I think that you probably have Thielen for like 1-2 more years max, but like they definitely need some more weapons on offense. And if McMillan's there, I definitely don't hate it, but I do think if Mason Graham or Abdul is there, I think one of those 2 guys gets taken before Tet.
You would have to think.
So if one of those 3 guys is somehow on the board, I think you got to go with one of them. And I don't really think you're going to be mad about any of them because didn't Tet McMillan just run like a 4.4 at his pro day?
Allegedly. There's no video of it, which is weird.
Yeah, no video of Wilt scoring 100 either.
Yeah. So maybe.
We'll see. But yeah, so I don't know. I felt good about this Carolina Panthers season. Like I said, I think we were a year away probably. And I think this upcoming year, they'll probably be even better. So anything else you want to talk about with the Panthers?
I don't. I think that this Panthers team has, and we'll get into this when the draft is over and we're previewing teams, like this is like an early team where like I think that this could be an opportunity for them to win this division.
I don't think you're wrong at all. I refuse to pick the
Bucks.
Yeah, I refuse.
I just think it could be the year that they could get over the hump, but we'll get to that after this entire period's over. But as of right now, last season, what they've built upon and the Bryce Young confidence going into this year, how could you
All-time
not
high.
how could you not be fired up? I think Dave Canales is a good head coach.
Yep.
I think that they get this thing figured out. So shout out the Panthers.
Yep. All right. On to the Saints. 5-12. They finished 4th in the NFC South. Started off absolutely hot out the gates, and
best team in the NFL.
Through the first 5 weeks, for the first 4 weeks, they were like one of the best offenses, even though they were 2-2
of all time.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Of all time.
It was crazy. But then things started to fall off. They had just a laundry list of injuries. Derek Carr got helicopter tackled, I believe, at one point in the season. Chris Olave had his 30th concussion.
Unfortunately.
This is just a team that this was basically the season from hell for if you're the Saints. Like, your whole team got hurt and you were pretty much just putting out like a practice squad week in and week out. I mean, I can go through literally everybody on this team got hurt.
Everyone.
It was honestly insane. They sit there at 9. I think they have. I think you're a little higher on the Saints team than this.
I think that there's a legitimate argument to be made that like they aren't as far away like as people lead off to be. I don't think that they're in the best spot of all time, but I don't think that they're like the worst team in the NFL, how some people act like they are. I mean, they still have Alvin Kamara. I think Alvin Kamara is still pretty good.
Yeah.
If Shaheed and Chris Olave are both healthy, they showed last season that they could be pretty damn good. I don't think Derek Carr is the best quarterback ever, but I think that he is like right below being at like that middle tier of quarterback. And there could be some times where he could reach that like middle tier of quarterbacks sometimes.
Yeah.
And honestly, you got to love the way that guy literally plays every single week. Like it's the last drive of the Super Bowl.
He's playing like he's actually in World War II every single week.
So shout out Derek Carr for at least giving a shit, because there's a lot of guys who don't.
True.
And so I think that it could rub people. I think the Saints rub people the wrong way, but you have a bunch of guys in the building that like actually like want to win. And I think the biggest downfall of the Saints is that they've never had a true rebuild period after the Sean Payton and Drew Brees era. Yeah. And there is still some DNA of this Drew Brees and Sean Payton era guys like in the locker room, like still to this day in 2025, which is crazy to think about. And I think for them to do any real damage in the NFL, they're going to have to truly bottom out at a point and get rid of some of these older, expensive guys and reset their team. But as of right now, all indications show that they're not going to do that. They go get Eric Reed. You have guys in the building already who are older vets. You still have Derek Carr. At this point in the weak division that they're in, you are to hope as the Saints front office and organization that this team is good enough to win the division in the division that they are in. And I think that is a fair assessment of this team. I think that it has the potential to win the division if fully healthy for the entire year, but that's a big if.
Yeah, I mean, clearly they still have some talent on this team, although a lot of it's probably on the back half of their careers. But I do like them bringing in Justin Reed at safety. I thought that was a good move to add him to the defense. But realistically, what it comes down to for the Saints is just can they stay healthy? Because I do agree with you. I think Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave are good. I think Alvin Kamara, he still has juice left in the tank. Like, I think they have good players on offense. It's just a matter of like, can Derek Carr finally get on page with some of these guys and stay healthy and have a coherent season altogether?
And not kill Chris Olave.
Yeah, and not kill Chris Olave would be great too. Couple aside from Justin Reed, they did sign Jawan Johnson to a 3-year, $30 million deal, and they did sign Chase Young to a 3-year, $51 million deal.
Don't hate it. I think people overblew the Chase Young signing. Like,
I think that's a totally fair number for him.
I think Chase Young has some really good reps at times, and I think that that's what he deserved to get paid. And I don't think Chase Young was in the business of wanting to be on a fourth team. Like, I think that he just wanted to be on the Saints, which is fine.
Yeah, I also don't know if he's getting that much more money anywhere else, because I think that he's had a relatively disappointing career for the amount of hype that he had coming out of Ohio State.
That's completely fair.
He was projected to be like
a gold jacket.
Yeah, this generational edge, and he just has not been. So good for him for getting somewhat of a bag here, sticking with the Saints. But the Saints are now on the clock at what, 9?
Yep.
What do you think? What do you think the move is here for the Saints with the 9th overall pick?
I have my mock draft up right here. I have the Saints. I think there's 2 directions that you can just go if you're the Saints, and both of those directions involve the trenches.
Yeah,
either you go tackle or you go D-line. And I have them taking Derek Harmon from Oregon at 9. I just think that it adds some beef to the O-line. He's a highly disruptive pass rusher, like in the middle, which we have seen that be the mold for a lot of teams of guys who they're trying to get as their defensive tackles, like as of late, like a Dexter Lawrence, like a Jalen Carter, guys who Chris Jones, guys who can disrupt the passer from in the middle of the defense. And I think that he fits the mold for that. And the Saints need all of the beef up either on the offensive line or the defensive line that they can need. So I went defense there. But if you were to look at me and say like Banks out of Texas as their tackle,
did they?
It would either be Josh Simmons at tackle for them or Kelvin Banks. If you were to tell me that one of those 2 guys were the pick at 9, you wouldn't be arguing with me on that. I would be spot on. What direction do you think they go?
No, I think you're right. I think they can't go wrong taking somebody on the offense or defensive line. I think that I think they have enough weapons on offense. Like this mock draft that I'm looking at has them taking Tyler Warren, and I'm like, they don't need that. That's not something that they would benefit from. And I know that like Jawan Johnson's not like the tight end that Tyler Warren is, but at the same time, like you need to keep Derek Carr upright. And
it's not a war. Yeah. It's not like he's a world beater, but it just doesn't make much sense to have him as your a tight end at that.
Who is the tackle from Minnesota? Because I've been seeing a lot of good stuff about that guy.
The tackle from Minnesota. As of right now,
something.
As of right now, I would probably not have him in the first round. Out of Minnesota, you said?
Yeah, it's
Armand
Membu.
Okay. I'm seeing somebody
I'm just going through. I'm sorry. Not Minnesota. I meant Missouri.
Got it.
Armand Membu. So somebody along the offensive line is where I would venture if I'm the Saints in this situation.
I don't think he goes quite that high. I think there's a few guys ahead of him in this year's draft, but I do think that he's going to be somebody that gets taken in the first round.
Let's see here. Yeah, I think either way though. I think offensive line is likely the route that they go. They went with Talise Fuaga last season, and then they also took what was that guy's name? Trevor Penning,
He's
the
been
tackle, who's been just a mess. Yeah, he's just been an absolute mess. So I think if you can shore up the trenches a little bit more for the Saints, then I think they're going to be in a much better spot. I like the guys that they have at the skill position, like I said. Admittedly, I have to do more research on the defensive side of the football for them, but I like what they have on offense as long as everybody stays pretty healthy.
I think that like their defense is always decent every single year, but
Yeah,
like I get it. Like if you don't like Derek Carr, you can be low on this team, but I mean, we're talking about this team like having 7 to 9 wins with a first round playoff exit. Like we don't think that this
100%.
team is going to be like doing like any like real like damage.
No,
So
no. There's no way that this team is going to be a 10 win, 11, 12 win football team, but hey, weirder things have happened, right?
you're not wrong. They were the best team of all time for the first 4 weeks of the season last year. So anything is possible.
Yeah. I think it'll end up being somewhere in the middle ground for that offense with those weapons. I don't think we're going to see what they had like 500 yards the first like 2 games of the year, 450, which was just
awesome.
stupid. It was crazy. So yeah, that I don't think it'll be that, but I don't think it'll be nearly as bad as what we saw the rest of the season. So there is some hope for Saints fans. Also, why do I look so sunburned?
Dude, it's your camera, man.
The lighting in here, I think it's my hat, dude. Watch. I'll take the hat off and everything is normal. Oh, fuck, it's not.
Not really. Back up a little bit.
Think I'm too close?
Back, I don't know.
Just leave the camera. Just leave the screen.
I think it's a little. I don't know.
It's the lighting in here.
It's the camera. I think you just got to play with it. I don't know.
We'll figure it out. But no, that does it for the Saints. Unless you have anything else.
I don't know.
Is there any other
NFL
I thought this was going to
be. I thought this was going to be way longer, but I mean, we were just swift into it. So I mean, unless if you have anything else.
No, I think we were to the point. I mean, we could kind of talk about some of the rest, like some of these other.
I mean, go ahead.
Free agency moves.
Go ahead if you have anything that you want to add in.
Oh, you wanted to talk about the Texans, and I think we should.
Oh, the offensive line moves that have been being made this offseason are like interesting that are going on. Like you watched the Chiefs, who have been bad. I think it's fair to say bad at picking a lineman lately.
Yeah.
Over the last few years, they have taken swings at guys at left tackle like Jawan Taylor, Orlando Brown, Kingsley Suamatoa. All of these guys, there's probably more, and the O-line just has been something that they haven't been able to do. And what I thought was interesting during the free agency period was them paying the backup tackle for the 49ers, who is Richardson or Trent Williams backup. And that is like he's played 12 games in his career. And that is like a big swing on a guy who doesn't have much tape and a lot of trust in your scouting department, who in the last 5 years haven't done a great job at assessing tackle talent. And I just thought that was an interesting move by the Chiefs. And the second thing that I wanted to get into, and then you could follow up on it, obviously, is the Texans trade away Laramie Tunsil to the Commanders. And what was the reasoning to do that? Well, it seemed like more of a help to the Commanders than anything else. It didn't seem like a deal that the Commanders even had to think about. It was like, okay, like we can get Laramie Tunsil for this. I know he led the league in penalties last season, but they were false start penalties, and that could be curable and fixable. It's not like he was like holding a ton, and he's a highly productive left tackle in the NFL, like from like like allowing pressures. Why did he get moved for so little? And what was the reasoning behind that, do you think? And also the Chiefs taking a big swing. I just think that as of right now, if you're an offensive lineman in the NFL who can kind of play, a team just might take a chance on you and see if it works out. And I alluded to this in a previous episode where you were like, "Oh, like yeah, like the Bears got 3 guys on the offensive line." And I was like, "I don't even know if it matters because their offensive line coach might just suck because
true.
the Eagles just get these guys who like never play football and only play rugby, and he's just like one of the best left tackles in the NFL."
Yeah.
And they get Mekhi Becton, who was like literally an afterthought to be one of the best performing guards in the NFL, and then he goes out and gets a bag from the Chargers.
Yeah.
So I don't know if any of these offensive line moves are good, but if history shows itself, it's that the Chiefs just haven't been good at getting these offensive linemen together. I know I just said a lot, but go ahead and twist however you want. No
so the Chiefs situation was really interesting to hear because that just seems like something that just seems like the most Chiefs move ever. Like, oh, we're going to get this guy that nobody's ever heard of that played behind Trent Williams for these handful of seasons, and we're just going to bank on it working out. It just seems like it's like they're just trying to be too slick about this, maybe. And maybe it works out because they find a guy that might not necessarily have been great for the Niners, and it just so happens that he works out because he's in a different situation, change of scenery, all this. But
it's not that he didn't work out for the Niners. It's just that he's Trent Williams backup, and Trent Williams is like one of the best left tackles in the NFL. It's not like lack of like opportunity.
But why wasn't he anywhere before this? I get somebody has
because
to be
he was
Trent
a
Williams
rookie.
backup.
He was a rookie.
Is this his second year?
This
Third
is
year?
like I would have to look. He's been in the league for like a few years.
Okay, so then I guess they're probably banking on the thought of, okay, the Niners do a good job of drafting a decent job of drafting players. They think that this guy could be the future once Trent Williams retires. Let's try and make a move for him. But it goes back to what you were saying. They might just not be a well-coached offensive line because we've seen some of these guys just not work out whenever they go there. And a guy with not a ton of experience, I don't necessarily know if that's where I want to be putting my $500 million quarterback coming off a season where he probably had the worst offensive tackles in the NFL.
It just it continues to be the biggest issue when you're looking at what's wrong with the Chiefs and why they lose on these big spots. Always comes back to their offensive line and how poorly they played in the Super Bowl versus the Buccaneers. They didn't score a touchdown, and I personally think that if the Eagles never took out their starters, I think there's a real opportunity that they didn't score a touchdown in this Super Bowl. But that's not how it played out. Like I remember the first thing that I think of is like people saying, LOL, you guys really are downplaying this throw from Patrick Mahomes. And he like threw a bomb to like, it was like 3 backups. I saw like Sidney Brown's hair. It's like, all right, save it.
Yeah,
so
who cares?
Like, I just think that if you look at the Chiefs, like that's kind of been your kryptonite, like all this time. And everybody always talking about like the wide receivers and like this, that, and the third. It's just like, no, like the biggest problem that the Chiefs have had up to this point has just been like their offensive line. And I don't think that move of paying a backup tackle who's had 12 starts in the NFL might have been the best way to slap a Band-Aid on this. And I get it. They're picking at the back half of the draft every single year. But if you look at some of the people that they've brought in over the years to try to fill that void, if Laramie Tunsil was available for a 3rd round pick,
Yeah.
Why would you not go and grab Laramie Tunsil? So I get it. He's up in 2 years and he's going to have to get paid. And it feels like the Commanders have the money to go and do that. And Laramie came out and said, like, the Texans have hit on a few of their draft picks and they want to keep all of those guys together. Like, that's their goal. And I understand that I wasn't in their future plans. So it didn't even seem like it was an ill-advised move by the Texans. It just seemed like it was like, hey man, like, we're trying to keep together Derek Stingley and Nico Collins and CJ Stroud
Stroud
and all
here in
these
2
people.
years. Yeah.
So I just think it was like a timeline manner and they were just being proactive more than anything. But I just think it's interesting that the Chiefs, like, your Chiefs window's now. Laramie Tunsil is under contract for a year, 2 more years.
2 more years.
Even if you let him walk after these 2 years, seems like he's a better option to plug in at that left tackle situation than anything else that you have. So
yes, I think Laramie Tunsil is still a very good NFL offensive tackle, but this whole thing just seems so such a red flag to me. The Texans' offensive line was just terrible, and he was really the only bright spot. And maybe the thought is outside of we have to pay him in 2 years, but left tackle is a spot that you should be okay with paying. Am I wrong for thinking that?
Well, no, I don't think you're wrong for thinking that at all. And maybe he's going to be what, like 30, mid 30s at that point or something like that. You could obviously say like Trent Williams has played into like he's 40 and still playing at elite level. If you're healthy, I mean, it seems like it doesn't really matter, but I don't know. It is interesting.
Yeah. So that's why my like red flag goes up, is because I don't think Laramie Tunsil's had like significant injuries. The Texans' offensive line has been really bad, and he's been a guy that has been a very good offensive lineman in the NFL since he got here. He still has 2 years left on his deal. Why is that not a guy that you want to be protecting your rookie quarterback for the next handful of years? And maybe they just want a clean slate on that offensive line because of how bad it was, but like, I'm still slightly skeptical about that whole scenario. And maybe I am just overthinking it, but it's strange to me that they would move on from a guy like that this year. Why not just keep him until next season?
Because
try to improve your offensive line.
To swing this the entire back way around. When you have a guy who you're trying to trade, who when you're trading him, it is a requirement that you are going to be trading for him and then immediately giving him a top of the market contract, it automatically diminishes that asset. And I think that there was a point that the Texans sat down and were like, we're not going to pay Laramie Tunsil. Let's trade him right now while he's still under contract so we can get the most out of him at the second compared to waiting a year and getting way less. The DK Metcalf example at the beginning of the episode. If they traded DK last year, they would have probably gotten a first round pick for him. But they waited.
Does this whole thing fall void if the Commanders end up extending him?
No.
Like this point that
they're going to. They're probably going to extend him regardless.
Yeah, well, that's my entire like.
But you get him.
I just don't get why the Texans wouldn't extend him. Is all. Is what
I don't
it comes
know.
Down to.
I don't get it either. But I just think that
line was so bad.
Undisciplined. They're undisciplined.
And maybe it's an offensive line coaching issue that they have, but I know they've been banged up, so I'll give them somewhat of a pass for that. Yeah. But still, that's like a cornerstone piece of your offensive line, and to give them away for a third-round pick doesn't feel like you got enough back.
It seems like they were ready. Like I said, I think what I'm saying is like it sort of falls void, but at this point you get him a year early instead of a year later for the team. It's more attractive to get him in the building right now than it is next year and then have to immediately pay him. That's like they were like, okay, yeah, let's grab this guy. He's available.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll see though. But I just don't know what the Texans are doing from an offensive line standpoint.
You know what?
Anyways,
We will get to that. That will
we
be a
will.
team that we talk about. So, but as of right now, definitely a questionable move. But yeah, I just think that the offensive line market is extremely interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams like taking
Flyers.
chances on a lot of guys, and you just kind of have to you got to hope that your offensive line coach can string
Figure
these
it
guys
out.
together and get them. Yeah, like you mentioned the Bears because I talked about them earlier, and even if their offensive line isn't incredible, I still think that the players they brought in were better than the players that they already had. So I
Are
think
they?
I
Are
think
they?
they
Because
might be.
the same thing happened when Ryan Poles thought it was a good idea to bring in like Nate Davis, and everybody was like, "That's a good signing, like a guard, like good for him, give him all that money." And then they go and cut him.
I can't speak on Nate. I don't know.
Think, well, they gave him a bunch of money, and then he got cut. He doesn't play for them, so
Yeah.
I just think that so that's all you need to know about Nate Davis. Like, I just think that the Bears right now are I think they should be worried. I think the Bears should officially be worried about who is making the moves for them in the front office. I think Ryan Poles should have been fired. He literally goes in every single season and throws money at guys and acts like he's on Madden building a team. Like, oh, this guy's a right guard. We need a right guard. We got a right guard. Oh, we need a left tackle. He's a left tackle. We got a left tackle. Like, same situation last year where it felt like the Bears made all the right moves and all of the guys weren't the right guys. And I just think that I'm a little skeptical on whoever comes into the Bears organization as of right now, just because I don't think Poles has a good I don't think he has a pulse on anything.
I certainly think that that's a hard point to argue against based off of last season, because we both thought that they were in a great spot from a roster perspective last year, right?
They had the O-line, they had the defense, they had the wide receivers. They signed DeAndre Swift. Let's go. And DeAndre Swift was mid again, and Keenan Allen a lot of it was coaching too. I think. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a mixture of both at this point.
For sure. I do too.
I think any moves that Ryan Poles makes at this point is for me met with caution, because I just don't think he's great at assessing talent.
We'll see. We're not to the Bears yet. I think that's next week. They have pick 10?
I believe
so. They are. It'll be the Bears and the Niners next week. So
we'll probably have to do 4 teams probably next week to speed things up a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine. But that does it for. I don't got anything else.
Me either, brother.
I'm ready for dinner. I'll tell you that.
All right, enjoy. I'm about to grind. See ya.
All right, go Birds.
White clouds blowing out when we max 4-5, not the size, but it kick up. Highlight of my life, man.